Hi everyone, I'm Lori Fredricks, Associate Professor in the MA TEFL program at the American University of Armenia. And I'd like to thank you for your interest in my talk, and I hope you'll find it informative. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now to show you the handout that I'd like for you all to have access to. Okay, so the title of the presentation is Beyond the Classroom, Scaffolding ELLs Video Creation. And this comes from a research project I conducted at an American university in Maryland, and an IEP program, Intensive English Program. So the project was essentially about using social media and technology to have students create and share videos and original images throughout the semester. And the overall goal of the project was to have students use and improve their listening and speaking skills creatively and in natural communicative ways. So we really wanted them to get out into the community, beyond their dorm, beyond their group of friends who are from the same country, to feel more at home on the campus and to kind of integrate with the campus community and beyond. Okay, so the main tool that I used was an EduBlog blog. There are many wonderful blog sites. This is just one example. I liked it because it was cleanly designed, easy for students to sign up for, and it was fairly reliable. So it never sort of crashed. It was always available for us. Some of them opted to use YouTube, and essentially we use video recordings from their phones, but that you could do more sophisticated things if you want to, but I didn't want to force them to sort of be kind of graphic designers, right? Video makers. I wanted them to be students experimenting with making videos for the purpose of using their creativity to get out into the community and to use English in, as I said, communicative ways. So we kept it fairly simple, but they could expand it if they wanted to, and you certainly could too. So I'll show you the original site that I used. So along the way, I wanted to provide clear instructions, have everything organized chronologically, and also to model for them what I expected, how to create the videos, how to fulfill the assignment goals. And what I would do with the classes on the first day, I would have each student create a blog. It was very simple, so I just model it and make sure everybody was able to do it. Only takes a few seconds. And then I would have them send me the blog, and we would organize it on our Canvas page, which was our learning management system, so that we could always go and share and look at each other's blogs easily. And then I would explain the first assignment, which would start off very simply, simple instructions and with video examples that I had taken myself, again, to show what I wanted them to do. So I'll share with you the site now. Okay. So this is what it looks like. As I said, simple design, and each class would have a welcome message where I would explain, for the first video, what we would do is go around the campus and find a site that we were interested in that seemed important and significant, and just make a 1 to 2 minute video explaining why that site was interesting and important for us. So again, to model this, I went to the student union, which is really important for new students to know about. It has a cafeteria, but it also has art galleries, spaces for students to meet and study, all kinds of interesting resources for them. So it's a good place for them to socialize and to meet other people. And also it provides some learning experiences. So what I did is here are my instructions, as I said, are the first part of the blog. And then I had short videos to show them samples of what I'd like for them to do. One of our graduates is Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets. So there's a statue of him in front of this student union. So I made a video about that, and then a couple of brief videos of the art galleries explaining, how the exhibits are available for them to just walk in and enjoy, and to show them what was currently there. So I'll just play the first few seconds of this one to give you a sense of what I did. You can find art everywhere on the UMD campus, even in front of STAMP. You might have noticed this sculpture of Jim Henson, one of UMD's most famous graduates, and he's sitting next to Kermit, who's the character he created for a well-known TV show called The Muppets. And a few years ago, even recently, there are some movies inspired by this show. So you can see noise is sometimes an issue, so we would also try to work out these little technical things together during the semester. And often their videos were more sophisticated than mine, which is kind of intentional with my modeling because I didn't want them to feel pressured. All right, so going back to the students themselves, who they were. So the process, as I said, was having them create and upload these videos to EduBlogs. And then throughout the semester, we would also come back together and share in class what they had done, what they had collected. And I would ask for volunteers to project some of the examples for all of us to discuss. So they would share in small groups. I would circulate. I, of course, would view them individually as well as the instructor. But then I would also ask for volunteers to share. So we had a lot of ways of recycling the language that was the target language for those particular lessons and projects. My students, the participants, as I said, were intensive English program students. This is an academic English context. Intermediate and advanced listening and speaking students. So, you know, their language was pretty sophisticated, but we were really trying to get them ready for university level study. That's the ultimate goal, as students who would be undergrads and grad students. They were mostly from China, but also from Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Taiwan, Myanmar, Ukraine, Thailand, and Mali. So we had some diversity, which was really useful and interesting. The rationale for the project. So it was to encourage them to better explore the campus environment and to have them interact more with others, but also to push them beyond just creating PowerPoint presentations where they would stand up and give a presentation and then others might not be that excited about what they were saying. So to get them to be as dynamic as they wanted to be and to use video making and in some cases animation, whatever they wanted to do to make a more interesting kind of presentation of the assignment. Also to facilitate interaction between students in class and in the campus environment. Again, so they would be part of the community and they would have opportunities for natural communicative language use and to integrate creativity into the curriculum. So from a practical standpoint for me as an instructor, also I had a collection of videos for which I could offer feedback and I could track their progress. And ideally, they would see improvement throughout the semester, right? They feel more confident in their ability to communicate. They would have had feedback on very specific things they could then go back and look at themselves in relation to my feedback by watching the videos again. So there was a practical aspect to this in terms of giving them a type of assessment that was tailored to them. And also they had an audience for their work, which increases accountability. I found that those who might not be as excited about completing an assignment on time or doing their homework, this kind of helped get them more engaged because there was an audience, there was an expectation they would be sharing this with others, right? And comparing their findings from what they did with the videos, whether they surveyed people, you know, or researched something. So I'm gonna share with you some examples from the students. Let me share with you first our initial blog posts, which, as I said, were the campus introduction examples. And I'll share two with you. The first of which is a student who went to the recreation center, which is like a gym. You know, there's exercise equipment, there's a track, but there are also other important things like places for them to take classes and to socialize and so on. So this is her video of that.
In my opinion, the recreation center is the most amusing place in UMD. It has many different things to do there, such as swim, box, play squash, use the elliptical machines, treadmills, bikes, play basketball, volleyball, badminton, ping pong, do yoga, stretch, lift weight, and run laps around the 0.1-mile racetrack. And most of them with a view of the outside. You can join one or more of the 45+ clubs available to learn new sports, improve skills, meet new people, and compete against other university club teams.
Okay. So you can see that she had this opportunity to narrate, of course, and to try to use language that we had been learning from the beginning in class. And this is another student, a very different site, the memorial on campus, and she kind of did a little research about the significance of this memorial. So in her description of this site, she uses some interesting academic language, as you'll hear.
The Memorial Chapel is one of the university's most visible icons. It was constructed in 1952 to honor the men and women from the university who lost their lives during the country's wars. The Memorial Chapel is a multifaceted campus facility, serving numerous on and off-campus populations and is home to a diverse range of events. Hundreds of weddings, concerts, lectures, and other special events are held at the chapel throughout the year.
Okay. So you can hear her using very sophisticated kind of expressions, multi-word units. You know, she said multifaceted campus. So they would kind of experiment. Of course, we had some target language that was introduced and meant to be used in the videos, but then they ended up integrating more and kind of becoming collectors of new expressions as they use them to prepare what they narrated, or in the surveys as they talk to people about different topics throughout the semester. So I'll share with you now a couple of examples from the next entry, which was about vocabulary. So they had a range of words we've been working with, and they could choose one that they wanted to illustrate somehow in a visual way, either with images or with a video. Most of them opted for videos to upload, and they were quite creative in how they handled this. So this is a student who illustrated. She had a lot of sort of graphic design skills, so she illustrated how drawing a treble clef can be awkward if you don't have great drawing skills. And you'll also notice in the videos that, you know, I didn't want to require them to show themselves. That's a kind of cultural thing, and also some people really don't want to do that. So I tried to offer options for being able to carry out the task however they wanted. They could show or not show themselves, as they could also conceal the people that they were interviewing for the surveys. They didn't have to record people's faces, which I think is important to give an option for that.
Drawing a perfect treble clef is hard, so the hand drawing looks kind of awkward.
Okay. I'll show another example from a student who did like to show himself, and he had a great sense of humor, and he often, you know, liked to make people laugh in class, and so he integrated his humor into these projects as well. So you can see him illustrating the term annoying. Oops, sorry, I have a lot of things open. Okay.
Let's go hang out. Let's go get some food.
Okay, so short and sweet, but really explains the target term. Okay, this is one more from a student who wanted to demonstrate how the word awkward could be used. And so she did this with a little creative video she made, which I think is kind of a nice way to show the meaning of this word.
My head gone away, the buffalo.
Okay. So as you can see, there was a lot of creativity in the ways that they decided to sort of tackle these assignments. They also use videos to introduce topics in their presentations. So they would sometimes give a presentation, but first show a video to illustrate a concept that they would then elaborate on, or as a way of kind of organizing part of their talk. So again, it added some variety. So what I'm going to show you now are some examples of using a video within a presentation. And this was a presentation about their home country and their cultures. So some of them chose to talk about language, some of them chose to talk about, you know, daily life and of young people, people their age, and so on. So here is the first example of that, which is a student who wanted to use some examples from Instagram also. here's another one. This is a student who wanted to talk a little bit about her language. So she showed this video in the beginning of the presentation and then elaborated on the history and the relationship of the language to their history as well.
Hello, I'm Joanna, and this is my keyboard. Look at the top right side of each keyboard. Many people will think that is a Japanese kana. Yes, Taiwan was once colonized by Japan, but actually, this is our Mandarin phonetic symbol system in Taiwan.
So it's a nice example of how video can help to illustrate an important point in someone's talk. Okay, and here's one more that I think is also a good example of demonstrating some key things that were then talked about at length. There's always something to give feedback on, like the use of convenience store rather than convenience store, you know, talking about word forms, giving feedback on grammar. So I'll elaborate on this a little bit more shortly. But I also wanted to share examples of the blog posts 3 and 4, which were times when the occasions where they were out surveying people. So I wanted them to talk to people other than, they could talk to their friends or people they met in the student center, but I also wanted them to get out and talk to people of different ages. They just needed to find fluent English speakers. They didn't have to find so-called native speakers, but I just wanted them to use English to get information using our target expressions and terms, and to kind of report back and share their findings, again, of what we had all learned, and sort of make comparisons and have interesting discussions in class after making these videos. So the first example, many of them like talking about relationships and the theme of dating. You know, this was one of several themes. So again, they had choices. So they asked, some of them asked the question, should people go Dutch on a first date? And this was an example of that.
Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So, do you think people should go Dutch on a first date?
I think on a first date, because both sides are still getting to know each other, I think it's respectful for each person to pay for themselves. But if somebody...
Okay, so you get the idea. So there were different topics for which they surveyed people. And the fourth one was surveying people about their news habits and their preferences. So what sources they like to use to access what was going on in the world. And they had to use these expressions to ask questions like, what will matter in the long run? So of the stories that were popular in the moment, which would matter in the long run? And we talked about a lot of things as extensions of this, like fake news, what fake news is. So we had a lot of content integrated that related to this topic. And so I want to show you a couple of examples of this one, because they really got out and talked to all kinds of different people.
Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So, what are your favorite sources for news coverage?
I usually check the news on Facebook, you know, but I think Facebook has so many fake news, so I can't believe it all.
Yeah.
So at the same time, I check the news on Naver, which is the most famous and popular site in Korea. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Then, of current news stories, which will still matter in the long run? I think that's a little bit tricky. But, well, I guess it's news about Trump and Kim Jong-un.
So they were also able to talk about issues that were important to them, things that were going on in the moment. Let me show you now an example from, and by the way, I wanted to go back to the idea of how I modeled this for them. So again, I would make my own videos. I would have the instructions each time we had an assignment on the blog, and then I would also model this for them as well. So let me go to, let me go to the fourth one actually. So for this one that you just saw videos of, I also went out and surveyed people and asked them, you know, what are their sources for finding out more about what's happening in the world? What are their favorite sources for news coverage? And which stories of the current stories will matter in the long run? So I interviewed people in the IT department, people they knew. So I had fun with this as well, kind of modeling it for them along the way. And I'm going to show you the fifth blog post, which worked out really even better than I expected, because I asked them to find a tool or resource online that could be useful for helping them improve their listening and speaking skills, and to do an assessment of that tool and share it with us. So again, make a short video. And I myself reviewed the site Pronunciationcom, and then I shared, you can see me here, I shared my own impression of it, what was useful about it. So we're sharing resources that can help them with the skills they're trying to improve, but also in the process of them doing this and, you know, playing the videos for the rest of us, we're also, you know, hearing their language use and seeing how they're progressing along the way. So the assignment had kind of multiple goals. And I had a student who was particularly quiet. So for some students, I got so much more information from the videos than I did from their in-class discussions, because they were kind of hesitant. We all have this issue. Sometimes some students are a bit shy or a bit more hesitant to speak in class. You know, if you're watching the video, you get a lot of information in their production. So this was a student who was fairly quiet, but then in her videos, she really produced a lot of interesting language.
Hi everyone, today I would like to introduce a nice website that is called Quizlet. Quizlet is a website that improves our vocabulary and pronunciation skill for our.
Okay, so the volume is a bit low, so I won't play more of it, but you know, again, I got a lot of information about her progress in terms of listening and speaking skills through these videos. Okay, so what can be assessed? Well, of course, grammar can be assessed. For instance, a student produced "where are you come from" versus "where are you from." So that's always an easy thing to target in your, you know, watching of the videos and providing feedback. You could consider conversational strategies and pragmatics. I often wanted to give positive feedback about the things that they were collecting as they surveyed people, because people, especially, you know, faculty and other people they talked to, they gave them new expressions that were relevant and related. So for instance, someone had the expression, "just my humble opinion," "in my humble opinion." And so I explained, oh, that's a great expression to use. Notice how the person you surveyed uses it, and so on. Vocabulary, so new terms and expressions, of course. So I would give a lot of feedback on that. You could also choose to give feedback on stress and intonation, or particular sounds. So for instance, I gave this feedback to a student, you know, when you were saying the "la" and "ra" in the phrase "in the long run," it was difficult to discern which sound was which. And so then I could target those things in class instruction as well, like follow up, you know, on these things that I noticed across learners, just as you would with other, you know, kinds of informal assessment and formal assessment. So some ideas for the future projects that I would recommend, some suggestions. In future courses, you know, again, start simple and progress to more complex projects in terms of technology and the complexity of the assignments. Continue to work on vocabulary that's abstract or idiomatic language. These things work well with these video projects. Experimenting with ways to develop cross-cultural awareness. Encouraging collaboration. I would give them choices sometimes to work individually or in pairs or groups, because different students, of course, have different preferences. You could get more sophisticated if you want to by relying on librarians, you know, or other people to teach them video editing software if you'd like to, but I didn't want to focus on that myself. You could certainly do that. And I would recommend surveying and holding focus groups either at midpoint or midpoint and the end of the semester. You know, both would be great if you have the time to do that, and offering them choices about the types of projects they would like to take part in. So in our midterm projects, for instance, I offered them a couple of options to make a video about a banned or censored material. It didn't have to be from their culture or from the US. It could be any point in history, you know, a film, a book, and so on. Or they could explore a contemporary controversy. For instance, there was an issue at the time with the football team on our campus. It was being discussed in the news and the newspapers. And so that was one that students were interested in talking about because everyone was talking about it. So they were able to also sort of, again, tap into something in the broader community. And for their final project, they interviewed a professional in the field that they wanted to go into. If they were undecided about their major or future goals, then they would interview someone in a field that they were just intrigued by. So they would learn more about that field. And this worked out really well because it turned out it was easy to find people. You know, they had the option of doing it virtually or face-to-face, but it was easy to find professionals who wanted to talk to them, wanted to talk to a student, you know, and kind of who was inspired to learn more about their field. And so in class, I would scaffold them and help them, and they would help each other as they thought about the questions they wanted to ask, you know, gave feedback on and practiced the questions to make them grammatically accurate and to help them if they had any pronunciation issues, stress intonation, or whatever. So I tried to really set them up for success. So for this final, much longer video project, they'd had a lot of practice. And I'll quickly go over some of the survey feedback and the things that came up when we talked about how they felt about these projects. Most of them were quite positive, so this is why I'm recommending, you know, maybe experimenting with this yourselves if you're interested. Some of the things that they liked is that they thought it was creative and helped them improve their speaking skills. Also, I'd asked them about anything they disliked. They didn't say much about this, but some people did feel hesitant about speaking to strangers. So that was something that came up. And sometimes they were hesitant, but then later in the semester, they said they were glad they had felt forced to do this because it really is something they have to do to improve their communication skills. So here you can see a comment like this. It's hard to talk to strangers sometimes, but at least you force us to do that, and it's very beneficial to improve our confidence, of course. So some final comments they made. Some of them said that they felt that it helped improve their English and to know more about their major. So they then knew something about someone in the department they were going to study in after they finished their English coursework, or a professional in that field. They talked about something that was motivating because it was important to them through doing that interview, conducting that interview. So I think it was a good final project. And I think that they found it to be fun. And some of them had, of course, different preferences about working on the individual assignments versus the pair assignments. You can't always make everyone happy, but we do our best to offer some variety. Okay, so I think I'm out of time now, but again, I would love to share all of these examples and you know, all of the different aspects of the assignments. Because I'm out of time, I want to invite you, if you'd like to write to me, to email me. You can see my email address in the handout here at the top of the handout. And you know, if you've already done this kind of thing or you haven't, but for those of you who have already done something like this, I would love to compare ideas. So here's my email address. And thank you so much for your time and attention. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And thank you again for watching my video.